Structure is unfolding across overlapping session memory. The hourly chart appears complex because multiple New York and Asia session anchors are stacked across several days. That visual density is intentional. Overlap reflects reality. When session anchors cluster tightly, structure does not simplify. It thickens. Memory accumulates. On February 16th, the New York session anchor formed inside the lower mid-region of the February 15th Asia anchor. That placement positioned the session within prior containment rather than beyond it. Relocation did not occur at formation. Following that formation, price moved downward toward the 120 moving average. Interaction intensified near that mean. Distance narrowed. Continuation extended toward the midpoint of the February 13th New York session anchor. That level also corresponds with the lower boundary of the February 12th New York session anchor. Multiple references converge there. This is structural layering, not coincidence, not noise. Price compressed near that cluster before stabilizing. It then returned toward the 120 moving average region. Mean engagement increased. From there, price advanced above the February 16th New York session upper boundary. It interacted with the 20 moving average and held above it briefly. Slope alignment remained positive. The 20 moving average had already crossed above the 120 moving average earlier. That cross remains intact. Separation between them persists. The 20 megaamperes continues to hold above the 120 megaamperes. Distance has fluctuated, but alignment remains. Slope is still upward. However, volatility behavior shifted. The 20-period Bollinger lower boundary expanded during the February 16th New York session. Downward volatility briefly increased. After expansion, stabilization followed. The lower boundary stopped extending aggressively. Compression began forming. The upper boundary of the 20-period Bollinger did not expand symmetrically. Instead, volatility reduced gradually. Range narrowed. The 4-period Bollinger reacted more sharply. Upper and lower boundaries expanded aggressively during New York volatility. Then contraction followed quickly. Short expansion. Rapid compression. Minor re-expansion. Now volatility on the 4-period envelope is decreasing again. This reflects shorter duration impulses, not sustained relocation. The chart appears crowded because structural memory overlaps across February 10th through February 16th anchors. That complexity is not removed. It is observed. When anchors overlap, interaction zones increase. Decision points multiply. Containment thickens. The February 16th New York session, therefore, did not create new structural territory. It negotiated inside layered memory. Overlap defines weight. The hourly boundary remains defined by multiple session references. Price oscillates between them. Structure remains in negotiation. Volatility has transitioned from expansion into layered stabilization across overlapping anchors. The February 16th Asia session anchor formed inside already accumulated New York memory. It did not define new structural territory. It settled inside prior containment. That placement matters because formation inside containment increases density rather than displacement. Density increases interaction zones. Interaction zones slow movement. After formation, price gradually pressed below the lower boundary of the February 16th Asia anchor. Engagement with the 20 moving average intensified from above. Separation narrowed steadily. Continuation toward the 120 moving average followed without acceleration. The decline did not expand volatility aggressively. It moved through layered reference. The 120 moving average overlaps the lower boundary of the February 10th New York session anchor. This convergence thickens the structural field. Mean engagement and session memory intersect at the same level. When moving averages and prior anchors overlap, volatility rarely accelerates immediately. It compresses first. It stabilizes before transition. On the hourly layer, the 20 moving average remains positioned above the 120 moving average. The cross alignment remains structurally intact. Slope has not reversed. However, the distance between them has decreased. Separation narrowed. Acceleration faded. This is not directional commentary. It is structural balance. Alignment without widening distance reflects stabilization. The 20-period Bollinger envelope reflects that same behavior. During the New York decline, the lower boundary expanded briefly. Downward volatility increased for a short duration, but expansion did not persist. The lower boundary stopped extending. Stabilization followed. The upper boundary did not mirror expansion. It remained relatively contained. Volatility imbalance did not sustain. 3 consecutive compression sequences are visible on the hourly layer. Candle bodies overlap. Range contracts. When compression dominates from multiple sequences, volatility is being stored. Stored volatility does not define timing. It defines tension. The 4-period Bollinger envelope reacted sharply during the New York impulse. Upper and lower boundaries expanded rapidly. Duration remained short. Immediate contraction followed. Minor re-expansion occurred. Then compression resumed. Short impulses. Rapid stabilization. Reduced displacement. The hourly structure, therefore, reflects layered digestion. It is not expanding structurally. It is absorbing prior movement. Overlapping anchors from February 12th, February 13th, February 15th, and February 16th remain visible. They are intentionally not simplified. They represent cumulative interaction. When anchors overlap across days, relocation requires stronger persistence. Brief expansion fails. Containment thickens. This layered containment defines current structure. Volatility no longer accelerates. Duration increases instead. Stability replaces momentum. Compression replaces extension. Interaction replaces displacement. Structure remains inside accumulated memory. Lower timeframe behavior reflects compression negotiating inside thick hourly containment. On the 15-minute layer, price oscillates between the midpoint of the February 16th New York session and the upper boundary of the February 15th Asia session. These references are close together. Space is limited. Limited space reduces displacement. Reduced displacement increases overlap. Overlap increases duration. The break below the February 16th Asia lower boundary initiated short-term downward engagement. The 20 moving average was engaged from above. Separation narrowed quickly. Continuation toward the 120 moving average followed gradually. There was no aggressive acceleration. Movement slowed as it approached layered reference. The 120 moving average overlaps the February 10th New York lower boundary. This convergence thickens structural memory. Price reacted with reduced speed. Short-term expansion attempts on the 15-minute chart lack duration. They extend briefly above minor resistance. They return toward mean engagement quickly. Duration remains limited. Extension remains shallow. Containment dominates. The 4-period Bollinger envelope shows repeated contraction following minor impulses. Upper boundary expansions are increasingly shallow. Lower boundary expansions stabilize faster. This indicates diminishing volatility acceleration. Impulses shorten. Compression lengthens. The 20-period Bollinger envelope on the 15-minute layer narrows progressively. Range tightens across multiple sequences. Candle overlap increases. 3 consecutive compression sequences confirm stabilization. Volatility reduction persists. Energy is being stored. Hierarchy remains intact. The hourly layer defines structural boundary. The 15-minute layer defines behavioral fluctuation. Despite intraday pullbacks, the hourly 20 megaamperes remains above the 120 megaamperes. Alignment continues. Slope persists. Lower timeframe fluctuations therefore occur inside higher timeframe alignment. They do not contradict it. They negotiate within it. When structural density increases through overlapping anchors, movement slows. Slow movement extends duration. Extended duration reshapes volatility structure. The chart appears crowded because structure is layered across several sessions. Layered structure increases reference points. Reference points increase interaction. Interaction increases hesitation. Hesitation increases compression. Compression increases stored volatility. No sustained relocation beyond overlapping session memory has formed. No persistent displacement beyond hourly containment has developed. Structure remains inside thickened memory, processing volatility between converging moving averages, narrowing Bollinger envelopes, and layered session anchors across multiple days.